Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Corinth. Today we've got Glenn Barker and George Marshall with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about everything from Lynchburg Creek to our parks project. So George, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, the parks project, we have a awesome Commons at Agora project. The council had approved the master plan, and now we're in the implementation phase. We've hired a consultants, Jones Carter, TBG, and Architectus to help us with that project, as well as we've hired a construction manager at risk, Burn Construction. So that's going to be a park directly across from City Hall, and it's going to include a stage, a great lawn for music or movies in the park, an interactive fountain, playground, and bathroom facilities on the site. It's extremely exciting. We're going to incorporate a lot of the existing natural features, the trees and so forth within the park. So it's an exciting project. Our goal right now is to break ground in June of 2022 and have the park open in June 2023. And so that project's also going to include streets that surround the park. With that, we're going to have North Corinth Street be realigned from Walton all the way down to Corinth Parkway. So North Corinth Street is no longer going to cross the railroad tracks. And the same thing goes with Walton Drive. Walton is no longer going to cross the railroad tracks either. Right there at the intersection of North Corinth Street and Walton, we're going to be putting in a roundabout. And so that's exciting, one of our first roundabouts. It's actually our third under design today. So we're excited about that. It's going to include a lot of on-street parking, and there's a lot of drainage aspects. One thing we've wanted to keep in mind with all of the Lynchburg Creek watershed is making sure that we're not creating an impact downstream. And so there's going to have to be some FEMA permitting and some U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permitting. But we're excited. We're working through all that, and hopefully the goal is to, potentially, if everybody wants it, is to have a rail stop right there adjacent to the park. So it creates a real a transit-oriented development. The city's also partnering with a developer on a piece of the land to build a mixed-use development with some retail, commercial, and residential apartments. So it's exciting.
So George, you had mentioned Lynchburg Creek. And we happen to know that that's been on our project list for 2 years.
A few number of years, absolutely.
In fact, I remember myself and the mayor and our city manager flew up to Washington to try to meet with our federally elected officials to tell them, hey, we need help. FEMA went through, they had updated our flood maps. That put a number of our homes in a flood zone. And we need help from the federal government to fix it. And so we had applied for a grant and to start working our way through that drainage project. So do you want to give us some details on where we see this heading?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually pretty exciting. This past month, we got some new information from FEMA. But the project overall, you mentioned adding homes. There were 75 homes that were added to the floodplain. And what that means for these homeowners is if they have a federally backed mortgage, they are now obligated and required to have flood insurance. And that can range anywhere between $5,000 to $3,000 a month, depending on the condition, the situation. Now, those properties do get grandfathered into a preferred risk rate. And I gave a presentation, mailed out letters to all those people that were in the Lynchburg Creek watershed. So that's actually what helped us get the grant, is all those people that went out and got flood insurance, because that's how FEMA calculates the benefit cost ratio, so that we're not spending more money on a project than the project's actually going to help.
And what it's going to save. Sure.
Right, exactly. So with this project, we've been working through. We had to put together 10% design plans, submit it to FEMA. We actually ended up submitting the project twice. The first year, the benefit cost ratio didn't work out as in our favor because we didn't have as many homes with flood insurance. The second go around, after some public education and that stuff, we were able to get the benefit cost ratio to work in our favor. This past September, the beginning of this month, we received word from the Texas Water Development Board. Basically, the money comes through FEMA to the state through the Texas Water Development Board, and then the Water Development Board contracts with us to give us those grant funds. That project has been authorized. We are now allowed to go spend money, which allows us to begin looking for an engineer. We're going to be going out for an RFQ for a design engineer that is knowledgeable and can help us through that grant project moving forward. Then we're also going to start right-of-way acquisition or land acquisition. I believe we have 1 or 2 parcels that we're going to have to work with the landowner, and they are aware of that work that we're going to be doing. We're going to work with them on how the detention ponds will lay out on their property. But we really, the benefit here is actually we're going to help 100 homes basically lower the water surface elevation so they're no longer in the floodplain.
Right.
And so that's really exciting. The other, I mentioned detention ponds, so we're going to have 2 different areas of detention. One is going to be just west of Amity Village, one of our older subdivisions in town. And then the other one is actually going to be at our community park, where we have existing baseball practice facilities. What we're going to do is dig out that area, lower it down, and allow that area to be inundated during certain storm events. Basically, the water is going to come in, and then it's going to flow out. And that's going to help the homes over there off Red Oak Drive. There's about 5 homes over there that are in the floodplain. And so with all this work, we are going to be playing with the practice fields, but we're going to actually incorporate the practice fields back into the lower elevations so that Public Works and Parks isn't going to lose some fields.
Very nice. So what's the total cost of this project?
The project's around just under $4 million, and we're getting $2.7 million from FEMA.
And we had budgeted, was it a little over $1 million or $1.5 million, or maybe it was right at $1 million about 2 years ago?
So yeah, initially we budgeted $1 million, and then we kind of noticed that the project was creeping up a little bit, and so we actually set aside $2 million for the project overall. And so on our side, we have the project funded, which is awesome, and we can move forward.
All right, so George, another question. We've got a large sidewalk that's going in between Garrison and Cliff Oaks. Do you want to give us an update on that project and why we're doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was included in this year's budget package that was just approved. The project will connect I-35 down Garrison with Sidewalk all the way to Cliff Oaks. That'll also allow the neighborhood there right off Riverview, the students and kids there, to be able to walk all the way to the school. The funds that we're using for that were set aside years ago that could only be used for Garrison Drive in its relation. There are some areas of Garrison that may also be repaired with this project. It's just a matter of making sure the funds are available for everything that we want to do. That project will actually be designed in-house by myself to help save the city some money, so we're not paying an outside consultant. So,
good for you, George.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And when do we anticipate that it will be completed?
Most likely we'll go to construction sometime in the spring of this next year.
Of 2022.
2022.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so George, one more question. We've got a Lake Sharon to Dobbs Road realignment that we have been working on for a little while. The budget line item is called Lake Sharon Offsite Storage. Can you give us some information on that, please?
Absolutely. So during our design of Lake Sharon Dobbs Road realignment, it was determined we needed specific right-of-way. And we were able to come up with work with a property owner to buy their entire parcel. And that parcel is going to be for both public right-of-way of the road as well as a future elevated storage tank. And then there's most likely going to be a remainder piece that the city might be able to sell off to a future developer. The project overall, Lake Sharon Dobbs Road, ties I-35 all the way to Quail Run. I mentioned earlier that there was the 3 roundabouts that are under design. One of them is going to be at Quail Run and Lake Sharon, so that's exciting. We've actually already renamed Dobbs Road officially to Lake Sharon. That happened by council action just a few months ago. We are hoping to begin construction in the late winter, early spring of 2022. So that's
So in
moving forward.
2022, we will have to get it in our memory banks to stop calling Dobbs Dobbs.
Yes, sir.
And to start calling it Lake Sharon.
Lake Sharon, absolutely. So while we're changing the street name of Dobbs Road between I-35 and Quail Run to Lake Sharon, so we have some consistency across the interstate. The section of Dobbs Road that's between Corinth Parkway and Shady Shores Road that goes into Shady Shores and Lake Dallas, that will still remain as Dobbs Road. So we still have the history and so forth of the Dobbs Road. Absolutely.
So we are realigning this road for two reasons. The first is TxDOT is coming through and there's going to be an underpass built.
Correct.
And that underpass currently does not line up with where Dobbs is now. It lines up more with where Lake Sharon is.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what's great is TxDOT has the environmental clearance package. When they did their initial widening of I-35, they included in the environmental package to allow for I-35 to go over Lake Sharon there at that interchange. What's exciting for me is that they've already set aside funding and they've begun the engineering process and right-of-way acquisition for that overpass. So that project is under design. I don't anticipate it to go to construction until about 2026, but we can, our road project there will be able to move forward without the interchange.
So the interchange, is that going to be part of the second and final phase of 35 expansion?
Unfortunately, no.
No.
It's going to, the interchange will be built to its full capacity as far as the horizontal stuff on the ground.
Okay.
What the interchange is also going to require is some changing of some exit ramps a little bit and on-ramps. And that underpass over there near Quail Run is going to go away. So right there by Destiny RV and so forth. And that it's kind of a funky interchange today anyway,
Sure.
especially if you're trying to go southbound on the frontage road to get onto I-35. It can be a little dicey during rush hour.
Right. So George, you've got an update on our regional cooperation project, which is the Water Connect between Corinth and LCMUA. Do you have hot off the press information?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a few weeks ago, I received some updated plans from the engineer from LCMUA. We've been going back and forth on actually three different locations to make this water connection. Years ago, it was going to possibly be across 2181, right by the fire station, the police fire station. The other location that we were looking at was down by Park Ridge and Turbeville. All looking at where LCMUA has existing water lines and where we have existing water lines. Well, there's a new development going on in Hickory Creek that is directly adjacent to Corinth. It's called the Lennon Creek development. It's under construction right now. And fortunately for us, we've already got a 12-inch water line stub across the road, across Park Ridge. And so that's going to allow the Lennon Creek development to connect over. And so they're going to put in a vault in the ground that will have the ability to put in a water meter and so forth, and connect our two water systems. And so that will, ideally, give the ability for either us to pass water to LCMUA or LCMUA to pass water to the city of Corinth like we did during the winter freeze.
Sure. So another level of redundancy.
Absolutely.
And we can do that, my understanding is, because we purchase water from the same place, the Upper Trinity Water District.
Correct.
So is there ever a future in which we would connect to Denton?
That's a good question. We're evaluating our long-term water needs and where we can get water. It's not unheard of to make emergency interconnections
Sure.
or things like that.
Well, we did it during the freeze.
Right. Because we already actually have an agreement with LCMUA to make those kind of interconnects. We don't have an agreement today with the city of Denton, but we already do send our wastewater up to the city of Denton. A good portion of the Oakmont development drains up to the north. So,
well, very nice. Well, thank you. So, Glenn,
Yes.
we've talked a little bit about water and piping and interconnects.
Yep.
We've got 3 more projects related to our water system.
Yes.
The first being the Woods ground storage. The second being fixing some piping around the golf course, some water pipes. And the third being our barrel strap lift station. Do you want to give us an update on those 3?
Absolutely. So the Woods ground storage tank is a rehab of the facility. The coating normally lasts about 20 years, but it's already starting to fail on the exterior. So we need to put that one up to the top of the list. Last time it was done is in 2004. So it needs to be done. We'll also replace valves and piping in the area. So that's that project.
The last time that we had updated, or I guess rehabbed this area, was in 2004. How often does this need to happen?
It needs to happen every 20 years, but the coating's failing early.
Okay.
So in order to prevent major damage, we're going to get that one done first.
Okay. So the coating, is that on the inside of the pipe or on the outside?
It's on the outside of the tank.
Tank.
And the inside of the tank.
Okay.
The inside of both tanks look pretty good.
Okay.
But the outside is definitely failing.
Okay. So Glenn, speaking of preventive maintenance projects, we've got a preventive maintenance project on wastewater lines in and around the golf course. Do you have some updated information on that?
Yes, it is. It's clay piping. In 2015, they did a series of slip lining piping where they just put in pipe inside of a pipe and reinforce it. And they noticed that the second section, the one that we're headed to now, had minor cracks in it. And they said about 3 to 5 years it needs to be redone. So that's what we're headed to do now. So that project has to be done before May for the low usage.
Okay. And so are we sliding another pipe into this section of pipe again like we did last time?
Yes. Okay. So you'll slide the pipe in. It's actually come in as a flat piece of material, so you don't have to do any groundwork. And then they'll just blow it up and they'll take the form and reinforce the clay pipe.
So Glenn, this to me sounds like a very cost-effective way to rehab a wastewater line. Does it last as long?
Yes, it'll last 50 plus years.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Very good. Well, thank you,
Thank
Glenn.
you.
We have one more major rehab refit within the city as far as wastewater is concerned, and that's our lift station at Barrel Strap Road. Do you want to give us an update on that, Glenn?
Yeah, so Barrel Strap Road is $24.99. It's the second largest lift station that the city owns horsepower-wise, and it's been in the ground for 21 years now. And it's time to rehab both pumps that are existing, add a third pump. So some of the piping's getting thin because of the conditions, and it's just time to get it rehabbed, replaced. So we'll add a third pump in there as well for redundancy.
Okay, so when the rehab is complete, this is good for another 20 years, or is 20 years a little too long?
20 years is about right.
Okay.
So we'll actually put it on a cycle, especially with the third pump in there. We'll have redundancy and backup, so we'll be able to maybe even push it a little longer than 20 years this time.
Well, very good. Not everything has to do with wastewater as far as the major public works updates that we're doing. We've got a few fun projects coming up related to our park systems. You want to give us an update on which park we're starting with and what the overall plan is for our 20-year plan for these parks?
Yes, I do. So Meadowview Park is our oldest park. It's built in 1997. And when I looked at that one, we said, let's start a program altogether to implement all parks rehabs. So every year for the next, until 2044, we have a plan out to replace a park. Meadowview Park is the first one. We plan on going with a aqua theme and making sure that the boards are involved in our decisions and help grow the idea. So we have about $130,000 in the budget for Meadowview Park, but we're reaching out. We want to reach out to grants and the community to improve the amenities in the park.
So our corporate citizens?
Hopefully, yes.
Right. And one thing that we've known about Corinth and our corporate citizens so far is that they've been very involved, and we're very thankful at the amount of help that they've been able to provide the city. So a park seems like it would be a great project. How many parks do we have in Corinth?
We have 18 total. But the reason why it's going to be a 20-year plan is because the community park's so big, it'll have multiple phases.
Very nice. How many phases?
Actually have 3 phases.
Whoa.
Yep.
Whoa.
So we want to, in the community park, we want to make sure that we do interactive trails. We want to improve the ball fields themselves to help bring in tournaments.
Sure. So. Let's take a minute to talk about the softball and baseball fields.
Okay.
I happen to know that we have about $100,000 in hotel occupancy tax that can be used on those fields specifically. And what we're hoping to be able to do is to increase the usability of those fields to attract more tournaments and in turn more visitors to our hotels. Do you have an update for us on what some of those improvements are going to be?
Absolutely. We plan on doing fence rehabs this year, signage, and actually rebuild all of the baseball fields this year.
So when you say rebuild, does this mean down to a new level of dirt and new turf?
So there's lips in the fields right now.
Okay.
So they're actually going to have to rip up the grass and level it all out and then replant the grass. So the outfields will not be touched.
Okay. So how long of a process is that, and how long will the fields be unusable?
So that's a big problem for us because we want to make sure that they're still usable during usable times. Mm-hmm. So after the fall season, they will come in and immediately start ripping everything out and be ready before the spring. So there will be no downtime for the leagues.
Wow, that's excellent news. And finally, Glenn, we have Piper Davidson that has been very diligently working towards her gold award for the Girl Scouts. And her main project, or her big project, is a dog park here in Corinth. Do we have an update on her project?
Yes. So the dog park, we have funding next year to start the dog park. We'll do it in 2 phases. She's actually gotten quite a few dollars for donations to help support it. So it's moving along. She's going to grab volunteers as well. So she's working on volunteers right now.
Is she working through the Parks and Rec Board?
Yes, she is. She's working through them. They're coming up with fences together, all the materials. They're working very well together.
Very nice. And finally, to update everybody, where do we foresee this dog park being?
So it'll actually be adjacent to the soccer fields at the community park, and we plan on starting early next year.
Very nice. And so you had mentioned at the beginning that this was driven by board involvement. Which boards specifically are going to be providing input on the parks?
Parks and Recreation Board will be the primary, but I would reach out to KCB as well.
So KCB and Parks and Rec. So over the next 20 years, if you want to have your fingerprint on one of these parks, these boards would be a great place to start with volunteering time.
That is absolutely correct.
Well, thank you for all the updates, Glenn.
You're welcome, sir.
And George, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for everything that you provided us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you to everybody that has tuned in on this episode where we talked about our capital improvement projects. Below, you're going to find a link that will list out the projects and also give everybody kind of up-to-date information on where we're at, as well as next time, our very next podcast is going to be a deep dive into broadband, which I know happens to be a huge topic of discussion for the citizens of Corinth and the Lake Cities. So please join us for that. And until next time, let's talk Corinth.